My name is Arive. I've been writing for since the early '80s, um, and I've been kind of watching this whole thing unfold since early on. Been keeping my eye on graffiti and its development since back then in Wynwood, and actually throughout the three boroughs, to be quite honest. Um, and that's who I am.
Yo, what's up? I'm Hec One, also known as the Loveism guy. I'm also the guy that started the first graffiti wall of fame in Miami back in the 80s, and just one of the pioneers out of Westchester.
I was introduced to graffiti by my cousin who moved down from New York City. We're talking about, they moved down in '78. My cousin was a gangster. My eldest cousin was a gangster. He was down with La Familia from the Bronx. When he came down, this is my eldest cousin. I have three of them. He came down, he was flashing colors, and he was more into the gang scene. And my other cousin was into the more hip hop side of things. He was the youngest of the three. And he's the one that I gravitated towards to because he was more into the graffiti thing. He was more into the painting. He's the one that, he had pictures. And that was kind of like when hip hop in New York was just starting as well, meaning that the terminology was changing and that particular culture was being developed. So he taught me a lot of that stuff early on when he came down from New York, and then meeting a lot of the other guys that were around, that they were from New York also. I hung a lot with them and started learning more and more about the culture, the whole break dancing thing. I was into that heavily. And the graffiti was just amazing. Like, when he showed me his photo album from that time, when he came down, just looking at the graffiti inside was like, whoa. And then the outside, the pictures were just like, whoa, like, what is this? And it just became so embedded in my brain that I started looking for people that were doing the same thing. So meaning that I was looking for a community. As time started elapsing, like I said, there was an influx of many New Yorkers that started coming down from, their mothers, they were bringing them down here because they were trying to get away from all the stuff that was going on in New York. By the early '80s, Miami itself, meaning Wynwood here, especially the Alapata, this whole neighborhood, it was a mix. It was Dominicans, a lot of Puerto Ricans. It was just a mixed bag of stuff. And it was a really eclectic mix. So it became like another New York City. And by the same token, it also had its problems, meaning that, people down here, they got into the drug game, the same thing. A lot of people, were at that particular time, some of the gangster guys, they were pushing bricks. When we were kids coming up, it was, we were kind of focusing on more the art form as opposed to the drug game and the gangs and that sort of thing. Down the street, you had 34th Street Players. You had Tutu Avenue right here, 22nd Avenue. Overtown was notorious. The whole neighborhood got it was pretty intense. It was just like being in New York City. But the younger guys, meaning myself, I was one of the young guys. I was one of the little kids. And so we knew not to travel down that path. We knew that, sort of we knew what we wanted to do. We just wanted to paint, and we didn't want to get into that whole game, that whole system, because we saw the original, me being young and watching the 34th Street Players, not 35th, 34, the original ones. They were into that whole drug game and going to New York and, pushing bricks and that whole sort of thing. And we weren't about that. We were about like, we just wanted to get our artwork up. We were into the whole b-boying thing, the whole graffiti thing. Some of the guys got into DJing and that sort of thing. And it was a beautiful thing because we didn't have to like, go down that path. We were just focused on this other culture, which is, to us, it wasn't hip hop back then until Bambaataa coined it, obviously. And then, once people understood that it was like a movement, it changed everything. It changed the dynamics of things. So that way people like started gravitating towards it. And then once it went global, by like 84 or something like that, 83 going into 84, once it went global, then I started seeing like a lot more family kind of popping up.
Back to the beginning. So I remember I was lucky enough to arrive in the United States from Cuba in 1982. So because of that, no English, just there was two groups of people, right? Like the rockers and like sort of like the hip hop kids, which wasn't even hip hop yet. It was just like the breakers. So, the lack of English made me want to have to be with the breakers because I said I can't be talking with those like hardcore like rockers because all they're doing is talking. But at least I could dance with those other kids, and I don't have to talk as much. And it was like sort of like a marketing decision, and I kind of liked the music more, and I started to just, I had already listened to some like hip hop music, which back then wasn't even rap music. It was just beats, it was driven around breakers, and a lot of it was robotic. It was like you could tell it was made for like, popping and locking and dancing. It was dance music, for sure, dance music. And, I became a breaker, and then I got obsessed with being a breaker. Like there was no graffiti in my, there was still no graffiti there. About a year later, I started doing graffiti. Very slowly at first, then more. Then I started to realize that I was better in graffiti and it didn't like shatter my bones unsuccessfully trying to do a windmill for the 20th or 30th time, hurting myself and saying, like I'm much better at this graffiti thing. So, and so I started to just gravitate towards the graffiti. By 84, I was barely doing any breaking. 85, I would consider start doing decent stuff. 86, I started to be known as a pretty decent guy. And probably 87 would be like 87 to 89 would be like my years where I would say like I was probably one of the best in Miami. I would have to. So here's the thing. I thought that you were the best. And here's why. One day you told me that you thought that you were like, he was like, we had a discussion about this a long time ago. And we sort of decided that it was between me, you, and Sar, back in the day, right?
Yeah.
And Sar was fucking good. I mean, Sar was better than me, I'll tell you that right now, okay? I saw his letters. There was something so charming and elegant and sort of like insightful about his letters. Just his readables, just the cleanliness and just the playfulness, and it was just something just next level, like he understood it in a way that I just didn't. And I remember just going, I got it to make him look so cute and so like off balance, he just had it, he really had it. But as far as like our crazy, ridiculous competition between A5 and VO5, which started out, which to me, to this day, like even at the time, as a kid, I was like, what the fuck? He's going over us just because the 5? Like we share a 5? Who the fuck cares? Like what is that? Why is that a thing? But whatever. So you went over us, then we ended up like, we started talking, right? We were like setting days to fight and shit. And eventually we just kept talking. And eventually, like when we started hanging out, there was always that fear that we were going to get killed. on the first meeting. It's like, you think this is a setup? You know? You remember that shit?
Yeah, I remember.
There was like a lot of like,
I remember all of it.
we're supposed to fight in the panic.
Yeah. I remember all of it. Yeah, I remember. You know, I remember Paul. You know, with the when he first did the Madeleine Saint 7. I remember that, and then it became, that was early '85, and then Alive 5 was just maybe about a month, or you know, a couple of months. Is when you guys like kind of like got together and did the whole you know, Alive 5 thing. You know, yeah.
What year do you think that was again?
That was 85.
85.
Yeah, it was 85. It was like mid 85.
Yeah. See, a lot of dates for me are mixed up now.
Yeah.
You know?
Not for me.
Yeah.
I you know, thank God that, you know, there's a lot of things that I stopped doing.
Yeah.
So I had to like really think about, go back into the past and really think about what and what transcended, who was doing what, you know. I definitely don't have any, you know, back then I would say this, you know, I was doing a lot of different things. I was, early on, I was, you know, obviously I was getting high, you know, I was snorting coke, you know, I was snorting coke at the age of 13. So imagine, you know, because I had people that were, you know, I was pushing drugs, you know, when I was a little kid, being from around here. My parents, you know, my mom, she didn't care. She was like, whatever, do whatever you got to do. Da, da, da. That's why I was traveling. I was going from North Miami down to your area, all that. I was traveling, looking, bombing while I was traveling, looking for other people that was doing graffiti. You know, where some way somehow, you know, to become friends with, or maybe nemesis. I have no idea. I really didn't care, as long as like we connected in a way, whether we were foes or friends.
Yeah.
As long as that, you know, just
It's really hard for
reaching
people
out.
nowadays to
Reaching out,
understand that
you know?
that was like the internet back then. You literally had to
Yeah,
reach out.
you had to
otherwise
reach
you
out.
would not-
You
like
had
that was
to-
like that was
Yeah.
like the friend request. You
Yeah.
had to say like, okay, you know, we're obviously adversaries,
yeah,
right? So can we have some kind of peace treaty?
Yeah.
But you had to do all that shit like
Yeah.
on the phone back then.
yeah, man. I used to take. I remember like way back, man. There were so many guys like. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I don't talk about, you know, but there was a lot of guys, you know. They were mainly from New York City, you know, all my early influences, and they were like amazing, you know, and you saw like who they taught and how they developed and that sort of thing, you know. That's how I wound up going to the Fountain Blue and that sort of thing. It was because of mutual friends, you know, and because I was told, hey, you know, so and so painted there, you know. Oh, go check that out, you know. And I had some pretty good teachers, I must say, when in that respect. Now in retrospect, like looking back at it, you know, like HC taught DC went into the Fountain Blue. He's the one who did the he did a DC piece, and there was a DS. I don't remember the DS. There was a DS.
Yeah, I remember the DS.
The DS.
The DS was dope. That D was dope.
Bro, Spec used to jock it.
Yeah.
Everybody used to jock. All the guys from ATA used to jock it, but
Yeah.
he was one of the first. DC was one of the first sons of HC, which stood the letter H and the letter C, and then which stood for hot and crazy. In Spanish, el loco caliente. So he was from you know from Queens, you know, and when he came down, he was doing his thing, man. A lot of people didn't see his artwork, but I got to see it. I was a young kid, you know, and he was doing stuff like, you know, I mean, that I was like, whoa, like, how do you get to this level, man? I mean, I was just dying to get to that level, you know, because I used to see him, and he, you know, he was like drawing in front of me and that sort of thing, and like, you know, he was teaching me, you know. While my cousin was teaching me how to use a spray can. This other guy was teaching me outlines and style, and then my cousin was teaching me how to actually paint, how to throw down your outlines and that sort of thing. you know, how to blend. You know what I'm saying? Like I was a little kid. I was a little shamak, you know, just learning the ropes. I didn't even think about like having a crew or anything like that. You know, it was a process. It took a while, you know, where for me anyway, because like I went through the whole thing, the period of bombing, just like, you know, a lot heavy bombing, and then into the throw-ups, and then into letter formation. It was a process, and it took a while. And like I said, I had always been looking for other graffiti guys, you know, like for a community. And I mean, I remember taking the 24. I used to take the bus all the time. I used to get high. I was a little kid. I had access to it because we lived right around here. Yeah. Like I said, this whole area here, it was like Perico country, you know. And
well, back then, all of Miami was really.
Yeah,
the suburbs. Everybody was doing it. Yeah, everybody was talking about it. Yeah, but you could tell certain teachers were doing it.
Yeah.
I had a teacher that had all this bling and stuff, and you could tell he was a cokehead.
Yeah, there was a lot of drug use, but what I'm saying is that you didn't have the element that was around here. Like the element from around here was like the Wild Wild West, bro. No, and like you would walk, like if you walked down the wrong block, you were done. Like you know. And that's when people, you know, they talk about Wynwood, but they didn't really know Wynwood like that, you know. Like that's what I'm saying. It was just like New York City, you know, like back then, because New York City was tough. It was really tough. There were certain neighborhoods that you just couldn't walk alone a certain block because you would you'll be going home without shoes or going home, you know, with your, you know, without a wallet or your little chain or whatever, what have you, just because you went down the wrong block.
I remember, I remember the design district specifically. There used to be a club there called Fire and Ice.
Yeah.
And it was like the only thing, it was so desolate. It was like the whole area was just completely empty. There was like one store per block. It was crazy.
Yeah, Fire and Ice was, my buddy, this is a guy named Howard Davis, and he was a curator. Pretty much what Gleason is nowadays, and he was putting stuff together, and I was part of that group. It was called Artifacts. He was actually DJing. He's the DJ there at Fire and Ice, believe it or not. And so he was from Canada though, and this guy was like, he was playing all kinds of stuff, man, that you were like, what? Like, his record collection was just insane, and he would play everything from like Mono de Bongo to the Sex Pistols and Susie and the Banshees, like stuff that I was like, what is this, bro? Like, what are you doing? And he would just mix it up. He didn't care. And people would go to Fire and Ice because it was crazy. It was just like something crazy.
Yeah, it was cool.
You know, so his mom owned the gallery right next to Fire and Ice. Fire and Ice was here, and right across the street was his mom's gallery, was called Joy Moose Gallery. And like I said, they were from Canada, and they were really progressive, man. Like they were just like what is this? So then her son, which is Howard, he had a collective, which is called Artifacts. People before the group Artifacts. So we would go around, and we would go to Star Island. He would get gigs, and he'll bring different artists together. So I was the graffiti guy within that artist group, you know, and we would go to Star Island and paint like the Sheik's house in the Star Island. That's how I got my gigs, like for Miami Vice, the early gigs that I did for Miami Vice, and it was through him because he had all the connections, and you know, meeting like, you know, all these guys like Michael Mann, which is the producer for Miami Vice. And now, mind you, I did a couple of sets for them, but I taxed them, bro. I was just like, yo, this is some money. I got to make some money. I'm a little kid, you know. I'm a young kid, 85, 15 years old.
Yeah. You
know, it's like, yo, I got to get paid, you know. And, I got to meet, like, Philip Michael Thomas was real cool. Don Johnson, not so cool. You know, he was like, nah, like whatever, you know. But Philip Michael Thomas, he was like super nice guy, man. Like treated me like royalty, bro. Like, and he didn't have to, you know what I mean? These guys are you know, they're all like stars, you know. We're just
Yeah.
like, wow, you know, you know, before it actually blew up, because then, you know, it took a while for the episodes to sort of like heat up and blow up, you know.
So let me ask you something. Other than the bakehouse, was there like any kind of graph activity in the rest of Wynwood back then?
Yeah, there was a lot of graphics.
But like pieces or just?
Yeah, there were pieces, man.
Yeah?
There were a lot of pieces. That's what I'm trying to tell you. HC was one of them. He was responsible. He had pieces under the bridge, like on 22nd Avenue and 28th Street. You take 28th Street. 28th Street goes all the way up to like, I want to say like, it goes beyond 27th Avenue. Now on 24th, there's a 24th and 28th Street. There's a park on the left, and there's a park on the left, and then there's a place where they sell shoes. It's called Lorraine's Fashion. That's where all the homeboys used to go, because they used to sell the shell toes. Shell toes, the suede Adidas, the suede Pumas, and everybody used to go there to Lorraine's. It's still there, Lorraine's Fashion. And so everybody used to go there. Now there's a park that's right next to Lorraine's. The park has a handball court. Now, in 1983, HC drops a piece there. Boom. Bro, it was just amazing. It was just like, whoa, like super clean. You know, that's what I'm trying to say. Like the main ones that were dropping pieces that early were guys from New York, you know, and we were like the understudies.
Yeah.
You know, we were the ones watching. And then his son, one of his first sons, DC, DSEE, he dropped another one over here by the where the Miami Herald is, the old Herald building. All right, when you come off the causeway, you had the Miami Herald building there, and then right when you got to before Biscayne, in like, it had to be 82, bro. Yeah, that had to be 82. It was a bubble style, but nevertheless, it was illegal. You know, because everything we did was illegal. I don't know if people know that or not, but you know, that was the thing back then. Like, I was kind of like a little bit squeamish about like penance and that sort of thing. All the productions that we did, the Bakehouse early on, that was all illegal. The same thing with the Block Boys. They were doing their thing, but they're not from Miami. They're from Hartford. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by like a lot of people that were coming down, they were from up north, and they were already somewhat developed, and they had a sense of it because they were getting it firsthand. We were getting it secondhand, and it took us a while to like kind of catch up to what they were doing style-wise. And then not only that, but like you said, we didn't really have places, so we had to make whatever it was our place to come and paint, you know, and to develop our skills.
Yeah, definitely there was a synergy between Miami, where every summer there would be all these kids summering and bringing down the culture from New York.
That's right.
And I remember the song Set It Off was one of those things that just came down on the tape.
That's
and
right.
Paul was like, listen to this. And it was way before like all this, it was like, and sometimes this is how cool it was. They would like record the radio in New York City, like they would just record all the radio, like the DJs talking, all this shit, and they would just like send that tape. Be like, listen to this shit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
we should do a lot of that too. We used to have, I was well connected. In that sense, I must say that I was well connected. I had to think about that. You know, the same way like when we talk about Ket and how Ket's talking about, he's talking about, oh, we got the scraps. I'm like, really, you guys got scraps? How'd you guys get scraps when you were like directly speaking to so-and-so and directly being at Henry Chalfant's studio
Yeah.
and looking at all their photo albums of Henry Chalfant's, and not only that, but you had all the different artists that were traveling through there, and he was meeting a bunch of people. That's how he knows so many people, because there were so many people that were coming in to Henry Chalfant's studio that, you know, you got to meet so-and-so, you got to meet so-and-so, and so-and-so, because it was a hub, and everybody was traveling through there, and, you know, everybody was meeting each other, you know? And I'm like, you felt that you were fortunate? Imagine us that we didn't have the Henry Chiffon, and we didn't have all the photo albums, you know, and we didn't have, you know, firsthand knowledge of what was going on, you know. It took us a while. It took us a while to, you know, to understand and comprehend all of that stuff, and kind of like, you know, we put together what we put together with what we had, and that was that, you know.
I have to confess that I cheated a little bit because in this, and I still don't know. I told you I don't get my years perfect, but it was in the Christmas break, either going from '83 to '84, or from '84 to '85. I got to go to New York City.
Oh, really?
I got to stay. My uncle lived in Passaic, New Jersey, and he was like, and I was like, you got to take me to Brooklyn. Not even Brooklyn. I was like, you got to take me to Queens. And he's like, why Queens? And I'm like, because like the Run DMC song talks about Queens, and I need fucking Kangles. I need a Kangol. I need like Pumas, and like I was like in another vibe. But anyway, crazy looking for graffiti pictures, and I found like, I remember there was a stash that I found. This guy Ali in a parking lot. I would like be flicking shit, and I found some stuff that was enough advanced and different. I didn't see like 50 pieces. I saw maybe like 9 pieces altogether in New York.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
But it was enough for me to really notice, because you know we're visual people, right?
Right, of course.
We had that gene to begin with, so it was enough for me to see what we were doing wrong here, in terms of scale, in terms of finishing, in terms of like, yeah, like you're not done yet, dude. You got to take that to the next level, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, you don't just do like a little outline, you do like a whole fucking background, and you really take that to like, you really have to own that wall.
Yeah.
And so I cheated because I saw that. And I remember the pieces were so big, and like the pieces in Miami were a little smaller, you know, or they were like taller. I don't even know what it was, but I just remember like looking up at them and go, the scale is totally fucking off in Miami. We're doing it too small.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there was a lot of things that were, I remember seeing like all the like I said, I was, you know, in retrospect, I was lucky.
Yeah.
I didn't see that before. When I was younger, I was like, oh man, like I'm getting scraps here, bro. Like what's up, you know? Can somebody put me on, you know? Because I wanted to be super fresh. I just didn't want to be fresh. I wanted to be super fresh, just like the other guys, you know? Like, I mean, watching like all of Dondi stuff early on, and like, you know, I was just talking to somebody about like a fashion line, you know, because that these guys put out, you know, in the early '80s, and nobody knew. You know, I kept talking to them. I'm like, yo, do you remember this? They're like, no, I don't remember that. I go, yes, bro. It was at Jefferson Ward. They're like, what? I go, yeah, Jefferson Ward, right in front of the Omni, right down the street over here.
Yeah,
and
like,
they carried a
Jefferson what?
line. They carried a fashion line that at the time I didn't know what the hell it was, because I knew it was graph related, but it was so futuristic that I didn't even know. I didn't know who did it until recently. I had to like really dig and really dig. It winds up being that it was a fashion line put out by Dondi, Futura, and Crash. And I'm like, man, this stuff was right in front of me. Imagine if I would imagine if I would have picked all of that stuff up.
Take the whole rack.
Imagine if I would have picked up the whole rack, bro.
Yeah.
You know, and nobody could tell me. And then Dash, speaking to Dash, you know, he sent me a little article, and sure enough, man, I started digging, and everything came up. And I said, you see? And it was that time period where Dondi was doing the more abstract stuff, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't really graffiti. It was, you know, it was changing. It was more like shapes and isms and that sort of thing. Kind of like everything else, you know, you start changing. You know, you start off with, you know, letters and that sort of thing, and then, you know, you start developing to other things, you know, which is a beautiful thing. And so by that time, those guys, like I said, you know, they were into clothing. Nobody in '83 was even thinking about anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, whoa, like, what is this, you know?
Yeah.
And then Madonna was just starting to come out, you know, with her first stuff, and the colors were vibrant, you know, and that sort of thing. And you know, it was like 83, maybe going into 84 or something like that when that
Yeah.
dropped, yeah. And then Madonna dropped, and then it was like, Lucky Star and Borderline.
Yeah, everything back then was super crazy. Like the colors were crazy, the outfits were crazy.
The outfits
Everything
were
was
crazy.
like crazy loud, big hats and like big glasses, big, like just crazy everything, right?
Yeah, man, it's a lot of history.
Commercialization, right? It's good. We want to eat. We want to thrive. But we want to do it with dignity, right? We don't want to sell out to the point where it's just like, oh, I see some things on the street where I'm like, like I wouldn't have done like the logo that big, or it's like you gotta have it tasteful. Like you want to sponsor me, don't expect me to do like an ad. I'm gonna do me, and then we're gonna do your logo small, like sponsored by. Like we're gonna push the art, and we're gonna push the art culture, at least in Wynwood. I'm not saying like everywhere, but if we're in a place of art, don't bring logos. Don't bring like this tacky, super overblown, hard sell bullshit. Sponsor art, and say like, yo, tastefully small. Like we're giving, basically, like just tell the public, here's where we're putting our money. We're supporting this guy, and this is us, just so you recognize. A little Instagram, a little thing. It could be this big, right? The rest, leave it to the art.
Yeah.
I'll do that, but I'm not gonna do this like ridiculous Disney type like ads in your face and just do everything the way the client wants.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that, yeah, I mean, you have your artwork, to focus on, yeah, I totally feel the same way you feel about that. I would also say that, it's kind of like, how do I say this, man? It's kind of like, there's two sides to it, you know what I mean? There's the commercial side of it now, currently, and the artist side of it, and you almost have to know how to play the two, because like you said, there has to be a balance, where like your artwork is not, how do I say this, imposed upon,
Right.
But by the same token, what I'm trying to get across is that you have to be careful that you don't put yourself out of the picture. See what I'm saying?
Well, I disagree with you, because in some places, I'd rather be out of that deal. I'd rather not do every deal.
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? I'm gonna protect my brand, which is myself, and I'm not gonna prostitute myself to a point where, like, if you want to co-opt my culture that we created a long fucking time ago, way before the money was here, we're gonna do it our way. We're gonna do it with dignity, and we're gonna do it putting the art first, not the commerce. Not like, oh, we want to sell, and we want to have a headline, and we want to have a big ass thing, and we want to have a sponsor.
Yeah.
No, it's like, no, you're not gonna have your mascot on my wall.
Yeah.
That's not what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's some people who do that kind of work, and that's called graphic design. That's not fine art. That's not like sponsoring fine artists in Wynwood.
Yeah, I understand.
So
what
there's
you're
a
saying.
line, and I don't want to cross that line, because you devalue yourself. So it's better to walk away from certain things, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, there's definitely certain things that you have to walk away from, But like, I was listening to Crazy Legs, and I was listening to his interview not so long ago, and they gave him a seat on, the whole thing with the Olympics, like break dancing going to the Olympics, or as an example. And so he was talking about, like, it's the same thing, All right, you have the Olympics, and you have b-boying, and it's kind of like, okay, when you're b-boying, there's a certain thing with the culture and that sort of thing, and there's certain guidelines, that you have to, criteria that you have to meet, for the culture. And I'm not saying that you have to like sell out, because I'm not into like the whole thing of that sort of thing. But what he said was important to me, because what he said was that if it's almost like he felt that he had to be on that panel, because that way, who else is? They're going to
Right.
put somebody else there. They're going to put somebody else, and that's what you see now. You see a lot of murals going up, and they're crap. You said the taste thing, the caliber of the artwork, and it's almost like you get what you pay for, so to speak. People nowadays, they don't want to pay an artist what they're due.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? They don't want to pay the artist what they're due. They just feel like, well, we're coming in here and, da 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 da, and, we're going to give them some peanuts and that's that, But then right behind that, you have this other thing where, like, they're giving peanuts to these other people that, number one, they don't understand anything. They don't have, the accolades, and they don't have like that history, and they don't understand a lot of things, behind the culture, and so you get, so and so that's claiming to be an artist, and they get like a really bad production.
So as far as Basel goes, I mean, it's an absolute good, right? There's no way that whatever is wrong with Basel cannot be fixed and the bad outweighs the good. And I'll tell you why. It creates such a hype from top to bottom that it creates a whole series of villages for artists. There's the super high-end, crazy, I'm gonna fly in on a jet and spend a ridiculous amount of money probably, but for a ridiculous amount. That's a crazy blue chip world that exists, and good for them. And then there's another one under it, and there's another one under that, and there's another one under that, and somewhere in between is the street art thing, somewhere in between is the craft people who are like doing the work on the sidewalk, and it just generates a whole, like, brings a lot of attention down to Miami. It makes Wynwood be the epicenter of street art in the world, which is incredibly helpful for us, right? It gives us a platform to sort of launch ourselves. If you have talent and you have the energy and the wherewithal, you can launch as an artist from Miami easier than a city that doesn't have that, for sure, right? So, Basel is an absolute good financially and also for the artists. I mean, you want them, you want them to, and I mean them, meaning the powers that be that have the ability to affect change in the big fairs and in the obvious big Basel fair. I would love for them to start paying attention what's happening here, like more attention, and cultivate all those layers and all those levels, because those are the future people who will be in your blue chip galleries. So maybe leave the fair and spend a couple dollars with those other people as well, because you might be buying, something off a 15-year-old Futura kind of a thing.
Yeah, I could understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah, and I'm glad that you made the point, because I think, like you said, like, so that Art Basel coming in and being such a big, iconic event, so to speak, it gives you room. It gives everybody room to sort of, you have different people with different levels, and so there's room for different people to wiggle, and that's kind of like what I was trying to convey, that there is room for different people. The one thing I would say is that once Basil's gone, right, then we should pay more attention, like what you said, about the locals and that sort of thing, and all right, who's gonna do all this stuff? Who? If you're gonna hire somebody, who are you gonna hire?
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like, you can't get so and so. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but
there's local people here that are like,
I agree with what you're saying, but I'm thinking in terms of more like them cultivating the talent, like the Grammys has like a best new artist, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
They should be bringing in like the best new, like, hey, this year's like hot new artist. That's like off, whatever they call them, like street I don't know what they call it, but like, off the gallery world. Let's find the most interesting street guy this year, and let's
Right.
give him a come up, and
Oh,
let's
yeah.
give him that
Yeah,
forum.
definitely,
Let's
definitely.
give him those eyes from the people who go to the big fairs and go like, look what's happening on the street. We have
Right.
we're featuring at least one guy.
Yeah. Well,
They
that's,
should actually feature a group show,
Yeah.
but at least something that's like shows that they're looking towards the future.
well, that's. I mean, like Gleason, Gallery Collective.
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's trying to showcase that, hey, we don't need so and so from Paris. We don't need so and so from London, and we don't need all that. Like, we have it here. Look at our portfolio, so to speak. And look at what we can do. Because like what you said, being from Wynwood, we're both from here, and it's sort of like, yeah, we need to like really kind of like, hey, let's push us as opposed to like, oh, I'm gonna bring, so and so and so. No, man, there's plenty of talent here now, and we've become older and we've become more talented, and we've grown, and the more we join together, the more the more of our talents can go to new heights, like a Jose Parla and that sort of thing, just to mention one of them, and be on that level where we're painting, the like where the Twin Towers sat, the Freedom Tower, the inside of the Freedom Tower, and doing big things like that, getting on a bigger platform.